Mr. Becerra? There you are.
Thank you very much. Ryan Becerra, Barkowitz, Chronic, and Shanahan. I represent a number of upstream water agencies, primarily on the Yuba and American rivers. First I want to thank the council members and the staff for the amount of time you've taken in the last several months to work with people regarding the Delta Plan. It's been very much appreciated, so thank you very much for that. I also want to say I very much appreciate what appears to be the clarification that's coming regarding covered actions, and that the upstream projects are not included in covered actions. We appreciate that very much. The thing I want to primarily talk about is recommendation WRR5, and it appears from your materials that staff has definitely heard the concerns of area of origin agencies, but I think the language that you've got here has some rather significant issues, and I'd just like to go through them. I saw 4 of them potentially in the little bit amount of time that I've had a chance to take a look at it. And I think ultimately that recommendation isn't necessary because you have another means to get at the same point, which I'll explain. So to me, there's 4 problems with the language you've got. The first is by bringing in Water Code 8521, you make that recommendation completely circular. In that code section says you're supposed to reduce reliance by implementing a series of projects that include things like water use efficiency, improving regional cooperation, improving or having more local and regional water supply projects. So then if you tie that into the concept that you shouldn't be able to change your points of diversion and places of use unless you do the things in that statute, well, a lot of things in that statute are going to require changes in points of diversion and places of use. So you end up with a very circular situation where, for instance, in the American River region, you might have a water district with its own water right permit that wants to move water to its neighbor in order to make the whole region work better, which is exactly the kind of local and regional project that 8521 talks about, but you can't implement it because the Water Board has implemented this recommendation. So you get a really circular problem. It doesn't make a lot of sense to go down that route. The second point, and Ms. Lopez made this point very clearly, and this is one of the key things that upstream agencies have been concerned about all along, is this feasibility standard that you have to evaluate and implement feasible projects. On a general level, like in the way this recommendation speaks, we don't know what that means. I mean, think about it in terms, if you're a water manager and you're contemplating whether or not you need to file a change petition with the state board, if the state board picks this up, what is it you need to do 2 or 3 or 4 years ahead of when you want to file the petition in order to satisfy this standard? It's extremely difficult to understand. Is it economic feasibility? Is it environmental feasibility? What's the standard? It doesn't make a lot of sense. The third problem is you have a conflict between this recommendation and Water Code Section 8532I in the Act, which says that nothing in the division is affecting any water right. And so what this recommendation specifically says is that you can't change your water right permit to implement the amount of diversion you are authorized to implement unless you meet this standard. To me, that's a pretty substantial impact on your water right, and I think causes a conflict with that code section. The fourth problem is the language now incorporates urban water management plans, incorporates agricultural water management plans, incorporates integrated regional water management plans. There are laundry lists under each of those categories as to what you're supposed to do. And, Ms. Lopez mentioned just one example, and that is the Urban Water Management Plan Act has a list of, I think it's up to 20 water conservation measures you're supposed to implement. I think the list goes from like A to P. So does this recommendation say you have to implement all of those in order to be able to go to the water board to get your water right permit changed? Is that what it's saying? It's not clear. And integrated regional water management plans are another good example. Though the primary purpose for those is so that agencies can work together to seek grant funds. And so does this recommendation say you have to have gone out and tried to implement all of the projects that you're seeking grant funds for in your integrated regional water management plan in order to be able to do a change petition? That's a real problem. I mean, that's a very heavy burden to carry in order to do a water right change petition. Which brings me to the last point, which is I don't think you need this recommendation at all because you can achieve the same goal in a different way. I mean, what this is trying to get at is that you would like people to do a better job before they go and seek to divert more water. What you have the ability to do is simply protest change petitions. I mean, the Water Board accepts protests to change petitions based on public interest considerations. That's the grounds that every environmental group uses if they're protesting a water right change petition. Now, water agencies are not going to be happy to get a protest from the Delta Stewardship Council, but I think that's a better solution than having a recommendation with pretty vague standards that the Water Board may pick up, start applying all over the place into situations that you've never thought about. It seems to make a lot more sense to delete this, and as you go through the years, if somebody's got an egregious petition that they want to do, that they're pursuing, protest it. I mean, that's going to have a lot of weight with the state board. You can participate in the agency's CEQA process. If there's a real problem, deal with the problem. Don't put out a policy that's going to have all kinds of vague terms in it that, you know, you'll have problems trying to figure out what it means, and everybody out there who's potentially subject to it may have problems figuring out what it means. So I don't think you need this. I think it's got some issues, and I think you can get to the same result in a different way. So I'd suggest you delete that recommendation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.